The night was cold and heavy with silence, the kind of silence that pressed against the ears and made a man feel like the whole world was holding its breath. John sat alone inside his small wooden cabin at the edge of the frozen valley. The old heater hummed weakly, giving just enough warmth to keep the cold from biting too deep. He had grown used to lonely nights, far away from the busy colonies of humans, but tonight felt different. Tonight carried a strange weight in the air, as if something was about to happen. A sudden sound broke the silence. It was faint at first, like a soft tap against the door. John froze. His hand went to the old rifle resting beside his chair. He listened carefully. Another tap came, then a dragging sound. His heart began to beat faster. Out here in the wilderness, no visitor came at night unless it was trouble. He stood and slowly opened the door. The icy wind rushed in, making him shiver. At first he saw nothing but swirling snow. Then his eyes caught a shadow on the ground just beyond the steps. A figure lay crumpled in the snow, small and trembling. John stepped closer, his boots crunching on the ice. What he saw made him stop in disbelief. It was not human. The figure was a girl, but her skin glowed faintly in the moonlight, pale silver blue. Her hair, long and tangled, shimmered with a faint green light as if woven with tiny threads of fireflies. Her clothes were torn and thin, not enough to survive this storm. Her chest rose and fell in weak breaths. She looked fragile, almost broken, but the sight of her eyes made John shiver more than the wind. They were large and bright, glowing softly even when half closed, eyes that were not human. For a moment John just stood there, torn between fear and pity. He knew enough of the stories. Aliens were dangerous. Some were predators in disguise, some carried sickness. Others were slaves sent to powerful men as gifts. What if she was trouble? What if helping her brought death to his quiet life? Then her lips moved. A soft whisper came out, broken words he could barely understand. Help, please. The sound cut through his doubts like a blade. She was begging, not attacking. She was cold, starving, dying. John's chest tightened. He could not leave her there, even if she was alien. She was still alive, still someone who needed help. With a grunt, he bent down and lifted her in his arms. She was lighter than he expected, her body shivering violently as if she had no strength left. He carried her inside, shutting the door quickly against the storm. The warmth of the cabin wrapped around them, but she still shook as if the cold had sunk into her bones. John laid her carefully on the old couch near the heater. He threw a heavy blanket over her and added more wood to the fire. Her glowing eyes opened slightly, looking at him with confusion and fear. She pressed herself back into the couch as if unsure whether he was friend or enemy. Easy, John said softly. His voice was calm, though his mind raced. You're safe here. Don't fight the warmth. Just breathe, she blinked, trying to understand his words. Her breathing slowed, though her hand still clutched the blanket like she was ready to run if he came closer. John noticed scars on her arms, thin lines that looked old, but painful. Whoever she was, she had not lived an easy life. Hours passed. The storm outside grew worse, rattling the walls of the cabin, but inside the fire burned bright. The girl's shivering eased and her eyelids grew heavy. She drifted into sleep, her glowing hair dimming like fading embers. John sat in his chair across the room, rifle close at hand. His eyes never left her. Questions filled his mind. Who was she? Why was she out there alone? Who had hurt her? And why did he feel like this meeting was no accident? He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The silence returned, but it was no longer empty. It was heavy with secrets. The girl looked helpless now, but something about her made his instincts whisper. She was more than she seemed, and this night was only the beginning of something much larger. John closed his eyes for a moment, trying to rest, but even in the stillness he knew his life had just changed forever. Outside the storm howled. Inside, a stranger from another world breathed softly in his home, and in that fragile sound of life, John felt a pull he could not explain, a sense that she was not just someone to help for one night, but someone who would change everything. The morning came slow and gray. Snow still covered the valley like a thick white blanket, and the wind outside howled against the cabin walls. John rubbed the tiredness from his eyes and looked across the room. The alien girl was still there, curled beneath the blanket, her breathing steady now. Her glowing hair had dimmed, and her face looked calm, almost peaceful. For a moment, she looked like any lost child in need of warmth. John moved quietly, cooking a small pot of porridge. The smell filled the cabin, and after a while her eyes opened. They glowed faintly, like light beneath water. She blinked slowly and looked around as if trying to remember where she was. When her gaze fell on John, she froze, her body stiff. "It's all right," John said gently, placing a bowl on the table. "You're safe here. Eat something. You need strength." She didn't move. Her hands gripped the blanket tightly. Her chest rose and fell fast like a cornered animal. John could see the fear in her eyes, not the fear of him exactly, but the fear of the unknown, of being trapped again. He backed away, showing his empty hands. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said. His voice was calm, patient. He had dealt with wild dogs before, and she looked no different in that moment, scared and unsure. After a long pause, she pushed herself up slowly. Her thin fingers reached for the bowl. She sniffed it carefully, then took a cautious sip. The warmth seemed to surprise her. Her lips trembled, and then she ate quickly as if she had not tasted food in days. John sat back and watched. Something about the way she held the spoon, the way her eyes flicked to every shadow, told him she had lived a hard life. He wondered again who she was and why fate had thrown her onto his doorstep. When she finished, she set the bowl down. Her glowing eyes studied him now, sharp and calculating. She whispered a word, broken but clear. "Why?" John frowned. "Why what?" "Why?" "Help," she said slowly. Her voice was soft, unsure, but it carried a strange strength beneath it. He leaned forward. "Because you needed it. That's enough reason." Her eyes searched his face, as if looking for a trap. Finally, she lowered her head, whispering something in her own tongue. John could not understand the words, but the tone was heavy with sadness. The hours passed quietly, but the peace did not last. Late that afternoon, John stepped outside to bring in more wood. The storm had calmed, but the forest was unnervingly still. His breath rose in white clouds as he looked at the tree line. That was when he heard it. A faint snapping of branches, a shadow moving too carefully, too slowly. He returned to the cabin quickly, shutting the door with force. The girl's eyes snapped open, glowing brighter. She sat up, tense, her body stiff like a predator ready to strike. "Someone's out there," John whispered. His hand went to the rifle. His instincts told him the hunters had come, whoever they were. Before he could say more, the girl suddenly moved, faster than his eyes could follow. She was at the window, her glowing eyes scanning the forest. Her breathing changed, steady and sharp. Gone was the weak, helpless figure he had carried from the snow. What stood before him now was something different, something dangerous. She turned her head slightly, her voice low. "Hunters," she said, the word bitter, heavy. John froze. "They're after you?" She didn't answer, but the look in her eyes was enough. She pressed her hand against the wooden wall, and for a second John swore he saw faint patterns of light spread from her fingers, like veins of fire crawling under the surface. Then they vanished, leaving only the smell of burned wood. John's throat went dry. He had thought she was fragile, broken, but now he saw the truth. There was strength inside her, hidden and powerful. The crunch of boots outside drew closer. John tightened his grip on the rifle. His heart pounded. This was not just a lost girl, this was someone valuable enough to be hunted. The girl stepped back into the shadows, her eyes glowing like two embers in the dim light. Her voice was cold now, steady. "If they find me, you will die too." John stared at her, part of him afraid, part of him unwilling to back down. "Then we don't let them find you," he said firmly. His voice carried a strength he didn't know he had for the first time. She looked at him with something more than fear, something close to surprise. Then, very faintly, she nodded. Outside, the hunters moved through the snow. The silent forest was no longer silent. Danger pressed against the cabin walls, and John knew this was only the beginning. The girl might have looked helpless when she arrived, but now he understood. She was not weak. She was hiding something dangerous, something powerful, and whatever it was, it had just become part of his life. Night returned quickly, swallowing the valley in shadows. The forest outside the cabin was quiet. Too quiet. Every sound felt sharp against the silence, the crack of a branch, the soft crunch of snow. John sat near the door with his rifle across. His knees. His eyes kept darting to the window, searching the darkness. The alien girl sat on the floor near the fire. Her glowing eyes stayed fixed on the door. She hadn't touched her food since evening. She didn't look tired. Instead, she looked like an animal waiting for the hunt to begin. Her body was tense, every muscle ready to move. John whispered, "They're still out there, aren't they?" She gave the smallest nod. "Hunters," she said softly. Her voice was like ice. "They never stop until prey is caught." John's stomach tightened. He had lived alone for years, facing storms and wild beasts. But this was different. This was human against human. Or worse, human against something far beyond him. He glanced at the girl, remembering the strange light that had flashed from her hand earlier. She was not helpless, not at all. And the men outside knew it too. That was why they hunted. Suddenly a whistle cut through the night, high and sharp. It echoed through the trees, followed by an answering call. John's grip on the rifle tightened. They were signaling each other, moving in closer. He felt the weight of fear pressing down on his chest. The girl's eyes narrowed. She stood and walked to the darkest corner of the cabin. Her voice was low but firm. "They want me, not you. If they see you protect me, they will kill you first." John shook his head. "I'm not handing you over." His voice was steady, but his heart pounded. She stared at him, confused, as if she could not understand why he would choose to fight for her. Finally, she said, "You are a fool." Yet her voice carried something new, something softer, like a flicker of warmth hidden beneath cold words. The crunch of boots grew louder, closer. John moved to blow out the lamp, letting the cabin sink into shadow. Only the fire gave a faint glow, making the girl's hair shimmer like faint green sparks. He motioned for her to stay low, his body pressed against the wall, rifle ready. Then, the door rattled. A rough voice called from outside. "We know she's in there, human. Step aside and you live." John's jaw tightened. He said nothing. His finger brushed the trigger, his breath slow. Another voice, cruel and sharp, added, "She doesn't belong to you. She belongs to us. Open the door or we burn your cabin with you inside." The girl's eyes flashed. Her body shook with rage. For a moment, John thought she would rush the door herself, but instead she stepped back into the dark, whispering something in her own language, words that carried power. The air in the room seemed to hum faintly. The hunters tried the latch, then slammed against the door. The old wood groaned but held. John aimed at the shadow of movement through the window and fired. The crack of the rifle thundered in the night. A shout of pain answered, followed by angry curses. Silence came again, heavy and sharp. John's ears rang. His heart raced. He checked the door, the wood splitting but not broken. Then he turned, only to see the girl crouched near the wall, her glowing hands pressed against the floor. The wood beneath her shimmered faintly, like heat rising from stone. Strange symbols glowed for a second before vanishing. John stared. Unable to speak, she was doing something impossible. She met his eyes, her voice calm. "They cannot break through now, but it will not last. We must run." "Run where?" John asked. "Into the dark," she said simply. "The forest hides better than walls." John swallowed hard. He had lived in these woods for years. He knew their dangers. But tonight the forest was safer than staying trapped. He nodded, grabbing a small pack and his rifle. She moved to the door, touching it gently. The wood hissed under her hand, and for a moment the glow returned. She whispered, Now, and pulled the door open. Cold night air rushed in. Snow crunched beneath their boots as they slipped out into the shadows. The forest loomed around them, black trees rising like silent guards. Behind them, angry voices shouted as the hunters realized their prey had escaped. John's breath came fast as they ran. His legs burned with effort. The girl moved silently beside him, light and fast, her glowing eyes scanning the dark like they could see what he could not. Every step felt like a gamble, every sound behind them a threat. Then in the distance, dogs barked. The hunters had unleashed their beasts. The chase had truly begun. John's heart pounded harder. His life had been simple just a day ago. Now he was running through the night with an alien girl who carried secrets in her glowing hands, hunters at their backs, danger at every step. He didn't know where the path led, only that there was no turning back. And as he looked at her face in the faint moonlight, he felt something stir inside him, a strange pull stronger than fear, stronger than doubt. She was not just someone to protect. She was the storm that had entered his life, and whether he liked it or not, he was caught in it now. The forest wrapped them in darkness, branches stretched above like black claws, blocking the pale moonlight. John's breath came in heavy clouds as he pushed through the snow. His boots sank deep, slowing him down, but the alien girl moved as if the cold ground did not touch her. Her glowing eyes guided the way, sharp and alert. Behind them, the hunters' shouts echoed faintly, carried by the wind. The dogs barked again, closer now. John's chest tightened. Every instinct told him to keep running, but his legs burned with exhaustion. Finally, he stumbled to a stop beneath a cluster of tall pines, pressing his hand against the rough bark. The girl turned back quickly. Her hair shimmered faintly in the dark. "We cannot stop," she whispered, urgency in her voice. John shook his head, gasping. "We need a moment, just a moment." Her glowing eyes softened for the first time. She crouched beside him, her small hand hesitating before touching his arm. The warmth surprised him. It was not the cold skin of someone barely surviving. It was steady, alive, carrying strength he couldn't explain. "They will not find us here yet," she said softly. "The wind hides our scent." John leaned against the tree, studying her face. He had expected sharp features, something frightening, but up close, she looked almost human, delicate. Her scars told a story of suffering, yet there was also pride in the way she held herself, a quiet fire that refused to die. "Who are they?" John asked at last. "Why are they chasing you?" She lowered her gaze, her voice trembled. "They call themselves traitors. They take those who are alone, those who cannot fight back. They sell us as property, as gifts." Her jaw tightened at the last word, as if it carried poison. John felt a cold anger rise inside him. "You mean they were going to give you to someone like you're nothing?" She nodded slowly. Her glowing hair brushed her face, hiding her expression. "I escaped. I should not have. They never allow escape. That is why they hunt me. To them, I am a lost object, not a living being." John clenched his fists. His whole life had been spent in solitude, avoiding the cruelty of men, but hearing her words made something burn in his chest. He could not imagine anyone treating her as less than alive, less than someone who mattered. "You're not an object," he said firmly. "You're not theirs." She looked at him then, really looked. Her glowing eyes searched his face as if trying to find a trick, but all she saw was truth. For a moment, her lips parted, and her voice softened. "Why do you care?" John didn't have an answer, not a clear one. He only knew that leaving her behind was unthinkable. He shrugged, voice low. "Because you deserve better. Because no one deserves chains." A silence grew between them, not heavy like before, but different. She turned her face away, yet John noticed her hands had stopped shaking. For the first time, she looked less like prey, and more like someone finding hope. The night dragged on. They moved again, deeper into the forest, until they found a hidden cave at the base of a ridge. The entrance was narrow, half covered by snow. Inside, The air was dry and warmer than outside. John started a small fire, careful to keep it low. The flicker of flame painted the stone walls. In gold, the girl sat close, her glowing eyes reflecting the firelight. She pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. Watching the sparks rise, John studied her quietly. He realized something strange. When he had first seen her in the snow, she had looked fragile, weak. But here in the cave, in the soft glow of the fire, she seemed different, stronger. Her presence filled the space, making the cave feel less like a hiding place and more like something alive. After a long silence, she spoke. "My name is Lyra." Her voice was quiet, as if she hadn't spoken it in a long time. John nodded slowly. "Lyra," he repeated, letting the sound settle. "I'm John." She tilted her head as if testing his name on her tongue. "John," she said softly, almost like it was a secret. The fire cracked, filling the silence between them. Lyra's shoulders lowered, some of her tension slipping away. She sat closer to the warmth. Her glowing hair shimmered faintly, painting the stone with green light. For the first time, John saw something in her eyes that wasn't fear or rage. It was something fragile, something like trust. That night, as the hunters searched the forest and the dogs barked in the distance, the cave held a strange peace. John and Lyra sat side by side, two strangers from different worlds bound by survival. Neither of them said it, but they both felt it. A bond was forming, not from choice but from need. A bond strong enough to face the storm outside, and perhaps strong enough to change both their lives forever. The forest never truly slept. Even in the quiet hours of dawn, the wind moved through the trees like whispers. John sat at the mouth of the cave, his rifle resting across his lap. His eyes scanned the snow-covered ridges below. The fire inside had burned down to glowing embers, and Lyra slept close to the warmth, her breathing soft. He should have been resting, but unease kept him awake. The hunters were too skilled to give up. They would not leave until they had what they wanted. John's gut told him danger was drawing near. His thoughts were broken by the faint crack of a branch. Far down the ridge, John stiffened. His hand tightened on the rifle. Another sound followed. Low voices carried by the wind. He cursed under his breath. They had found the trail. "Lyra," John whispered sharply. Her glowing eyes opened at once. Her body tensed as if she had been waiting. She crawled beside him, peering out into the pale light of morning. The hunters moved like shadows between the trees, armed and cautious. At least 5 of them. Maybe more. "They are close," Lyra said, her voice calm but bitter. Her glowing hair shimmered faintly, betraying her rising fear. John checked his rifle, his jaw tight. "We'll hold them off here." She shook her head quickly. "You cannot fight them all. They are trained. They will burn the forest if they must. I should leave. They only want me." John turned sharply, his voice low but firm. "No, I won't let them take you, not while I'm breathing." For a moment, her glowing eyes searched his face as if trying to find a reason. His words made no sense to her. No one had ever refused to hand her over, but John's voice carried no hesitation, only truth. The hunters climbed closer, their boots crunching the frozen ground. One of them raised a hand, signaling the others to spread out. John aimed his rifle, waiting. His pulse thundered in his ears. Then a shout. "We see you, humans. Step aside. Give us the girl and live." John didn't answer. His finger pressed the trigger. The shot rang out. Echoes bounced across the ridge. One hunter dropped into the snow with a cry. The others ducked for cover, returning fire. Bullets struck the rocks near the cave mouth, sending shards flying. Lyra crouched low, her eyes burning bright. John saw her hands trembling, not from fear but from something building inside. The air around her seemed to hum faintly, a strange energy rising. "Stay back," John warned, reloading quickly. But before he could fire again, Lyra stepped past him. Her hands glowed with sharp green light. She spread her fingers wide, and a sudden wave of energy blasted out. The snow swirled like a storm, trees shook, and 2 hunters were thrown back against the ground. Their weapons clattered from their hands. John froze in shock. He had seen hints of her power before, but never. Like this, she was no helpless girl. She was a storm hidden in fragile skin. The remaining hunters shouted in fear. One of them raised a strange device and aimed it at her. A crackling net of blue energy shot out. Lyra cried out as it wrapped around her, pulling her to her knees. John's heart slammed in his chest. "No!" He fired again. The bullet striking the device, sparks exploded. The net flickered and vanished. Lyra gasped for breath, her glowing eyes blazing with fury. The hunters regrouped, shouting, "She's worth more than the human. Kill him, but bring her alive." John ducked behind the rocks as bullets tore through the air. His mind raced. He could not hold this line forever. But then he heard Lyra's voice, sharp and powerful. "John, down." He dropped flat against the ground just as a pulse of blinding green light shot from her hands. It hit the hunters like a crashing wave, throwing them back into the snow. Their screams echoed through the valley before silence returned. Smoke rose. From the scorched ground, the forest smelled of burned wood and metal. John pushed himself up slowly. His ears rang. His hands shook. He turned to see Lyra standing tall, her glowing hair alive with green fire. Her chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. She looked nothing like the broken figure he had carried into his cabin. She looked fierce, unbroken. John stared at her, his voice low. You could have destroyed them all along." Her glowing eyes softened, pain flickering behind the fire. "Strength is not freedom. If I fight, they hunt harder. If I stay weak, they think I am nothing." She lowered her head. "I can never win." John's chest ached at her words. He stepped closer, his voice rough but steady. "You're wrong. You've already won. You're alive. You're free. And as long as I'm here, you're not fighting alone." For the first time, her glowing eyes filled with something he hadn't seen before. Tears. They glistened like silver drops in the firelight. She whispered his name, almost broken. "John." The valley lay quiet once more, but both of them knew it was only the beginning. The enemy had seen her strength. They would return, stronger, fiercer. But in that cave, for the first time in her life, Lyra was not alone. The fire in the cave burned low, its light soft against the stone walls. John sat close, reloading his rifle with hands that still trembled from the battle. His mind replayed the fight again and again. The hunters shouting, the bullets flying, Lyra unleashing her power like a storm. He had known she was more than she seemed, but seeing it with his own eyes left him shaken. Across from him, Lyra sat curled in the blanket, her glowing hair dimmed again. Her face was pale, her eyes heavy. The power she had used had drained her, but John could still see the strength behind her fragile appearance. "You should have let me go," she whispered suddenly. Her voice was soft, but it carried weight. "They will not stop. You saw it. They want me more than anything, and now because of me they want you dead too." John looked up sharply. "I'm not letting you walk into their hands." Her glowing eyes flickered, sadness swimming in their depths. "You don't understand, John. No one ever fights for us, no one ever keeps us. We are passed around like objects, like gifts, until we break. If you stay with me, they will come again and again until they destroy you." John leaned forward, his voice firm. "Then let them come. I won't hand you over. You're not their property. You're not some gift to be traded. You're family now." The word echoed in the cave like a spark in the dark. Lyra's lips parted slightly, her hands tightening around the blanket. "Family?" she repeated, as if she had never spoken the word before. John nodded slowly. "I lived. Alone for years. I thought I wanted silence, thought I didn't need anyone. But when I saw you in the snow when you asked for help, something changed. You're not a burden, Lyra. You belong here with me." For a long moment she said nothing. Her glowing eyes shimmered with something new. Hope, fragile but real. Then her voice broke softly. "No one has ever said that. To me." John's chest tightened. He reached out, placing his hand gently on hers. Her skin was warm, trembling. She didn't pull away. Instead, her glowing eyes lifted to meet his, but peace never lasted long. A sudden howl of dogs broke through the night, carried by the wind. Lyra's body stiffened, her voice trembled. "They are coming again," John cursed under his breath. He stood and checked his rifle. "Then we stand together." Lyra shook her head, panic flashing in her eyes. "No, John. If they take me alive, they may spare you. But if you fight, they will kill you without mercy. Please." "Run." He turned to her, anger and determination burning in his eyes. "I've run from people my whole life, Lyra. I'm not running from this, and I'm not running from you." Her voice rose, desperate. "Why? Why throw away your life for me?" John's voice was steady, his words sharp with truth. "Because you're not just some helpless alien girl anymore, you're someone who matters, you're family. And family doesn't run." Tears welled in her glowing eyes, spilling down her cheeks like silver light. She covered her face with trembling hands, whispering words in her own tongue. Words John couldn't understand, but he could feel the emotion in them. Pain, gratitude, fear, and something deeper. The barking grew louder. The hunters' voices, echoing through the forest. Lyra wiped her tears, her glowing eyes fierce now. She stood tall, her hair shimmering brighter than before. "Then we fight, together." John nodded, pride swelling in his chest. He handed her a knife from his pack. She looked at it, then at him, her lips curving into the smallest smile. "Not much," she said softly. "But it will do." They prepared quickly, John checking the cave's narrow entrance, stacking rocks for cover. Lyra stood beside him, her glowing hands pulsing with faint green light stronger than before, fueled not just by survival, but by something new. Belonging. The hunters appeared at the ridge, dark figures against the snow, torches in their hands, dogs pulling at their chains. One of them shouted, "This is your last chance, human. Give us the girl and live." John raised his rifle, his voice echoing into the night. "She's not yours. She's with me now." Beside him, Lyra's glowing eyes blazed. The hunters laughed cruelly, but neither John nor Lyra wavered. In that moment, the line was drawn clear. It was no longer about survival. It was about choice. John had chosen her. Lyra had chosen him. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The bond had been sealed, not by words, not by fear, but by something far stronger. Family. And as the hunters charged forward, weapons raised, Lyra whispered under her breath, "If we fall, we fall as one." The ridge shook with shouts and the barking of dogs. Torches lit the night, their flames dancing in the snow. John stood at the mouth of the cave, rifle ready, his breath clouding the air. Beside him, Lyra's glowing eyes burned brighter than the fire outside, her hair alive with threads of green light. She looked no longer like prey, but like a storm waiting to break. The hunters advanced, weapons raised. Their leader stepped forward, a tall man wrapped in black furs. His voice carried through the night. "You are a fool, human. That girl is worth more than your life. Give her up and we may spare you." John shouted back, his voice steady. "She's not yours. She was never yours." The leader laughed coldly. "She is not even yours, human. You do not know what she is." John tightened his grip on the rifle. "I don't need to know. She's with me. That's enough." The leader raised his hand, and the hunters surged forward. The dogs charged first, their teeth bared. John fired, the crack of the rifle echoing. One dog fell, another yelped and retreated, but still they came, faster, closer. Lyra stepped forward, her glowing hands raised. She whispered words in her own tongue, and suddenly the snow swirled violently around them. The wind howled, lifting ice and frost into a blinding storm. The hunters stumbled, shielding their eyes. John ducked behind the rocks, firing again and again. The recoil pounded his shoulder. His ears rang, but the hunters kept coming, crawling closer through the storm. Then the leader shouted something, pulling a strange weapon from his belt. It glowed with sharp blue light, humming with deadly power. He aimed at Lyra and fired. A crackling bolt shot through the air, striking her chest. Lyra cried out, her body thrown back against the stone wall. The glow in her eyes flickered. John's heart stopped. He rushed to her side, grabbing her shoulders. "Lyra, stay with me." Her breath came shallow, weak. Her glowing eyes met his, filled with pain. She whispered, "Leave me. Run." John shook his head fiercely. "No, not this time. You're not alone anymore." Something broke inside him. A fire he didn't know he carried. He turned toward the hunters, rage blazing in his chest. He fired again, each shot fueled by fury, forcing them back step by step. The leader raised his weapon again, but before he could fire, the cave filled with green light. Lyra stood once more, her body trembling but unbroken. Her hair glowed like a river of fire. Her eyes blazed with fierce determination. "Enough!" she cried, her voice shaking the air. Energy surged from her hands in a wave of green light. It spread like lightning across the ridge, striking the hunters, their weapons shattered, their bodies thrown into the snow. The dogs whimpered and fled. Torches were snuffed out as if the storm itself obeyed her. The leader dropped to his knees, staring at her with wide eyes. His voice cracked with fear. You're not just property. Lyra's voice cut through him like steel. "I am not yours." Her glow flared, and with one final burst of light, the leader was hurled into the darkness, his scream fading into silence. The forest fell quiet. The snow settled. The wind stilled. Only the crackle of the dying fire remained. John lowered his rifle slowly, staring at Lyra. Her body shook, but she stood tall, stronger than he had ever seen. She looked at him, her glowing eyes soft now, not with fury but with something deeper. He stepped closer, his voice rough. "You saved us both. You're not helpless, Lyra. You never were." Her lips trembled. "I was never seen before, only used, only feared. But you called me family." Her voice broke on the word, tears glistening in her glowing eyes. "And I chose to believe you." John placed his hand gently on hers, steadying her trembling fingers. "Family isn't given, it's made, and you're mine now, whether you believe it or not." Lyra let out a shaky breath. For the first time she smiled, faint but real. "Then I am not alone anymore." The night sky cleared above, stars burning bright. The hunters were gone, scattered or dead, but John knew they would not be the last. More would come, drawn by greed, by fear, but none of that mattered now. He looked at Lyra, standing beside him, glowing softly in the starlight. She was no longer just the fragile figure he had carried from the snow. She was strength. She was hope, and in her eyes, he saw something he had thought he lost long ago. Purpose. Together they stepped out of the cave, the snow crunching beneath their boots. The world ahead was uncertain, dangerous, but they would face it side by side. Lyra whispered softly, almost like a promise. "More than they thought, more than I believed. But you saw me." John smiled faintly, his arm steady around her shoulders. "And I always will." The cold wind blew across the valley, but neither of them felt it anymore. For in that moment, they were no longer a lonely man and a hunted alien girl. They were family, bound not by blood but by choice. Stronger than fear, stronger than chains. She had seemed helpless when she arrived, but she was never helpless. She was more than she seemed.